Well, I'm a man on fire.
All right, hello humans. Welcome back to the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. You are listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming!
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are coming at you from Vancouver, Canada. It is January 18th, 2018, and it is cloudy, overcast, rainy sort of day here in Vancouver. Like it was yesterday and the day before. Usually is that way here throughout the winter. We are here talking quotes, some different perspectives on things. Today's quote, kind of a depressing one, maybe for some people, but I think it has some interesting connotations. Who's bringing us our quote today here, Greg? Let's see. Whiskey Shots breakfast cereal. It's just shots of whiskey. That is Whiskey Shots breakfast cereal. That they are our sponsor today, and they are bringing us our quote from Natalie Goldberg, an American writer, mostly writing about writing. Her quote is, "Anything you fully do is an alone journey." That is again Natalie Goldberg, an American author. I think some people might find that a little bit depressing. I do too, actually a little bit. Depending on what your perspective is on it. Of course, people get help from people during their success. Anybody that has support around them, family, friends, parents, business partners, whatever. They of course prop people up, and they help people along the way as you help them, through whatever they deal with. But we are all on our own sort of path, right? And even when people have the same goal in mind, such as, business partners or, people working on a project together or something like that, their goals are ultimately different, right? Even if they are very, very closely aligned. People like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they both, they started Apple together, but with very sort of different goals in mind. And even though they worked together closely for a long time, but they had different goals in mind, they had different aspirations for what the ultimate end game of not just their company, but like their personal lives, right? And that's what really plays into it is people have personal goals, whether that's like wealth or family or both those things, or creative success or notoriety, like whatever drives people is different, and thus if you 100% are putting yourself into something, even if somebody else is 100% putting themselves into the same thing, you are alone in the journey, because your perspective and your what your vision is for the pathway of whatever you're doing is going to be skewed and warped toward what you ultimately want out of your endeavor, and those could be completely different things from somebody that's working with you. So to say something like, anything you do fully is an alone journey, it's because the fully is only known by you. It's just like the quote from the other day from Agnes Replier that said that it's not possible to find happiness but anywhere but ourselves. To give yourself to something fully is to put your entire self into something, and therefore you go alone, because if it's something that's keeping you up at night, if it's something that you're working on whenever you're away from anybody else, if it's something that causes you to close in or whatever, if it's affecting your personality, if it's consuming your life in the way that something would if you are putting yourself fully into it, like it's kind of impossible that somebody else is doing that to the same level and for the exact same reasons. Especially like if you're working on a project from the ground up, something like the Apple creators were doing. Like I mentioned before, I do a lot of writing, so there's a lot of that involved in it. It's something that's purely born out of like an idea in your mind, and so that what that idea is, you're trying to bring to fruition in some sort of way, and so its weight and its importance is personal. It's not just about financial success or quote unquote achievable goals. It's about whether or not you're going to be happy with the outcome of this project. It's whether or not you're going to be happy with the ultimate resolution. Because you had such like a specific idea of how something would or should be, and like I said, people impact that along the way. Like people bring in their ideas, and the ideas change and get better or worse, or they just they grow, right? From that, again, especially once you get to a high level of success, it all gets filtered through you, right? Like in the end, it's your choice. In the end, it's your decision on anything, and so only you can really make that choice. Only you can know whether or not which way you're going to go, and only you can know whether that's a mistake or whether it's the right way to go, or whether because all that stuff is kind of based on gut feeling, which goes back to a quote we had on one of our earlier shows from Malcolm Gladwell about trusting our gut feelings and exploring them, and because they are are kind of our true jerk reactions to things, often turn out to be the right choices. I shouldn't say often, but it's not often. I shouldn't say right choices. They often turn out to be, I don't know, the thing, like they often turn out, I think, largely like we think that they should. Or at least, one of the possibilities that goes through our minds. So the fully doing it alone, it's funny it comes from a writer about writing, because it is, especially in an endeavor like that, like you very are on your own, depending on, even from a writing partner's standpoint. Again, people have different thoughts in mind, different goals, and some people work well that way and grow that way, and that's why they have writing partners that they work with all the time, because they bounce ideas off each other, and I think that you need that. But like I said, in the end, like it's going to be somebody's decision on which direction it goes, and when you come to spots of conflict, it's hard to compromise. It's hard to compromise when you have a very specific vision in mind for something. And that's not just, of course, writing. That's anything. Like if you have a very specific vision in mind for your business, if you have a very specific vision in mind for your relationship, and somebody who is closely related to that, has a different idea of how it should or would go, you have to either come to compromise or separate yourself from those people, because again, like it's really difficult to compromise when you have very specific visions in mind for something that you're trying to get done. And along the same lines, when you are fully committed to something, when you are working on something, again, whether it's work, family, relationships, whatever, and you kind of you realize that some people, or you realize people that are with you on those journeys aren't as as into it as you, whether again that's, a story that you're writing that you're trying to get done, or whether that's a relationship that you thought was going to go a different way. It can really break your heart. I sometimes I talk to parents. I did a lot of coaching, and parents would come up to me and ask me about their kids and stuff like that, and you could see in their face when they'd say, like, my kid doesn't really talk to me, so wondering if you have, any advice on this or this or this, different sort of things, usually sports related things. But you can see it break their heart a little bit when their kids, aren't bringing them into their lives. And because, again, like, they're fully invested in their kids. Like, that is their life, right? And so to have that not come back the other way, to have, like, kind of an underappreciation be happening is difficult to deal with. And that happens, all over the place. Again, if you want to relate it to love, like, that's basically what happens, right? Like, two people are in love, they're both, fully into it. And unless those ideas align almost exactly, it's bound to kind of fall apart at some point, right? As depressing as that sounds, when you have fundamental differences with people, they're bound to cause issues, and it's hard to compromise on fundamental issues that you have. When you see that somebody is not, giving it their all into something that you are. So like a relationship, you see what you see somebody, your partner is, they're falling, they're not helping themselves, they're not they don't have the same, like, sex drive or anything like that. Like, those are all things that start to play into, long-term relationships that plague people, right? Because it starts to get into each other's heads. Why are they not, feeling this way when I'm feeling this way? And why are they not wanting to do this when I'm wanting to do this? And those things start to spiral into, like, passive aggressive behavior and non-communication, and then it just it just falls apart, right? And that's kind of like the breakdown of any relationship is, and again, not just romantic. I think work relationships work like that too. When you start to see fundamental differences come in the direction you thought things were supposed to take, compromise has to be made. And when compromise gets made, some people don't end up happy, and sometimes both people. And they're not happy at each other, and people get, again, like, passive aggressive, and business relationships get severed and people move on. It's really difficult to see when people are not fully invested in something that you're fully invested in. But I think something to take from this quote, the main thing is that nobody will be as fully invested in what you're doing as you, and nobody should be. Everybody should be fully invested in their own stuff. And it's nice when those goals more or less align and you can work together. But it's important to understand that not everybody has the same exact vision in mind, the same exact goal for themselves as you do for yourself. And there's no, like, fault in thinking a different way. And in fact, you need people around you that think in different ways. So don't put that expectation on anybody but yourself. And I think you should put that expectation on yourself. Like, especially if you're somebody that works with partners, to give nobody else any excuse for doing anything less. But also because I think that, the real drivers, the real movers, the real impactors of our world and our society are people that just don't stop like that. And I'm trying to pull that out of myself, but it's a really hard thing, I think more and more that maybe it's just an ingrained thing with people, that some people just have this special ability to not stop. But I also can't really believe that, because I think that when something really interesting comes up, or when something starts to actually get momentum, it can be really exciting, and I have no problem throwing myself completely into it. So, maybe that's where we'll leave it for today. Appreciate anybody that's tuning in. That quote again is, "Anything you do fully is an alone journey." That is from Natalie Goldberg, an American author. And her quote is brought to us today by Whiskey Shots Breakfast Cereal. It's just shots of whiskey. Hope everybody enjoys that responsibly. That is Whiskey Shots Breakfast Cereal. Yeah, so thanks again to Crooked Spies for providing the music today. Thanks again to anybody that is tuning in. Make sure you start following the Slackline on Instagram at the.slack.line, Twitter at slackline_radio, and YouTube at the Slackline podcast. You can also check it out on iTunes. Everything is for free. Just check it out, subscribe. That would be awesome. You have been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming.
Made up dumb fairy tale name, you.
This is the Quote of the Day broadcast. Thanks again to anybody tuning in, and have a good day.
I've seen you around, messing with all the boys and things in town. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. You burn this whole place down just to wear the crown.